Okay. Um, Hi, freshman. Um, Here we go for Romeo and Juliet, Act 1, Scene 2. And we're just going to continue on. And we're going to read and we're going to annotate. And so bring up your document in Cami. And like I've said before, I think it's easiest if you have them side by side, and you can pause my recording as many times as you want and just make your annotations as we go along. And then we'll talk about this. Act 1, Scene 2 is a fairly short scene. It's not very long. Remember that during reading, we're going to be highlighting in blue the most famous or beautiful lines. I'll tell you what those are. Ones that are important to the plot are in orange, and then we're going to underline in blue any words that we'll need to discuss or brainstorm, and we'll do a lot of notes in the margins actually right here. So this is right after the fight scene, right? We've had a little bit of time pass, and so Capulet is returning from his meeting with the prince. And I'm assuming it didn't go very well. He probably got his head bit off and got told what is what. And remember that the prince made his sentence as if you ever fight in our streets again, you'll be your lives will pay the forfeit. You will be killed. I will kill you. So we have Capulet and we have Paris. And remember, Paris is interested in Juliet. He wants to marry her. So he's coming repeatedly. This is not the first time he's asked this question. He comes to Capulet, Lord Capulet, over and over and over and over to ask for Juliet's hand in marriage. So here we go. Capulet says, but Montague is bound as well as I in penalty alike, and 'tis not hard, I think, for men as old as we to keep the peace. He's talking about the punishment that the prince gave him. Of honorable reckoning are you both, and 'tis pity you lived at odds so long. But now, my lord, what say you to my suit? And what we want to do is we want to underline suit, because suit is an interesting word. And when we think of suit, we think of like something that you wear. But he is talking about his question. A suit is like a question. And so we're going to put a note off of suit that Paris wants to marry Juliet. That is what he means when he says, what of my suit? What of my question, right? But saying, or what I have said before, my child is yet a stranger in the world. She hath not seen the change of 14 years. Let 2 more summers wither in their pride, ere we may think her ripe to be a bride. We're going to highlight that in orange. So, my child is yet a stranger in the world, and let 2 more summers wither in their pride, ripe, ere we may think her ripe to be a bride. So what he's saying, she's 14 years old, and he's not agreeing. He says, no, I don't want Juliet to get married right now. I want her to wait 2 more summers till she's 16, right? And so I'm just going to put a note for myself so I remember right here that Juliet is just 14 years old, period. Wait until she is 16. Okay. Younger than she are happy mothers made, and too soon marred are those so early made. The earth has swallowed all my hopes but she. We're going to highlight that as well. That's a plot line. So he says, the earth hath swallowed all her hopes but she. All my hopes but she. So what that means is when the earth is swallowing something, right, we put people in the earth when they're dead. And so what he's saying is, I had other children, but they're all dead now. And so Juliet is my last one, and all my hopes lie upon her. She is the hopeful lady of my earth, but woo her, gentle Paris, get her heart. My will to her consent is but a part, and she agree. Within her scope of choice lies my consent and fair according voice. So what we're going to highlight here is, but woo her, gentle Paris, get her heart. My will to her consent is but a part. So he's saying, I want you to woo her. I want you to date her. I want her to like you. and I don't want to force her to marry you. Because remember, that was a very common thing at this time. Like people would just say, okay, girl, you're going to go marry this person and you're done, right? Go do it. So we're going to make some comments. So we're going to make a comment here. And on this one, we're going to say that Juliet is Capulet's last surviving child. All the other children are dead. And then right here, we're going to do one that says, if you are going to marry my daughter, she must like you. I won't force her to marry you. And remember when we were talking about characters that Capulet has a little bit of an anger streak. And we'll see that later in this act. And we thought that maybe there's some suggestions that he's abusing his family. This is really cool of him because it is at this time period is well within his rights that he can just say, Juliet, you marry Paris. And there's a lot to like about Paris, right? He is noble. He's a relative of the prince, so there's that noble blood. And he's rich, and he has connections. And Capulet could use all those things. So there's a lot to like about Paris. But it's interesting that he says, no, Paris, you got to do this. Capulet seems to care more about his daughter than he cares about this other stuff that he's going to get by marrying his daughter off to Paris. And she agreed, within her scope of choice lies my consent and fair according voice. This night I hold an old accustomed feast, whereto I have invited many a guest. So Capulet says, tonight I'm having a party at my house, and I have invited all these people, such as I love, and you among the store, one more most welcome makes my number more. So he just invited Paris to the party. And my poor house, look to behold this night, earth-treading stars that make dark heaven light, such comfort as do lusty young men feel when well-apparelled April on the heel of limping winter treads, even such delight. Among fresh female buds shall you this night inherit at my house, here all see, and like her most, whose, merit most shall be. So we're going to highlight some stuff. So we're going to do markup, and we're doing in orange again. So among fresh female buds shall you this night inherit at my house, here all see, and like her most, whose merit most shall be. So he invites Paris to the party, not to hang out with Juliet. He's hoping that Paris will find some other girl, and which is interesting because like we think about Paris and we think, well, Capulet should really like Paris, but he doesn't, right? So we're going to write down, it doesn't seem like Capulet likes Paris very much. He invites him to the feast in the hopes that Paris will find someone else to pursue. And so then I'm also going to reply to this one. I'm going to say, maybe Capulet doesn't like Paris because he keeps asking to date Juliet, and that would get annoying. Because remember, this is not the first time that he has asked Capulet for Juliet's hand in marriage. He keeps asking over and over and over and over and over. And so I would think, yeah, that would get kind of annoying. Like, I've told you no, can you just stop for a while? May stand in number, though in reckoning none, come go with me. So a servant is there as well, and he gives the servant a paper, right? Go, sirrah, trudge about through fair Verona, find those persons out whose names are written there, and to them say, my house and welcome on their pleasure stay. So he gives the servant the paper. Here you go. Go find all the people that are on this invite list and go get them to come to the party tonight, which is weird to us that he's inviting people the day of the party. I guess they didn't have a lot going on. So then he and Paris leave. So it's just the servant. He says, find them out whose names are written here. It is written that the shoemaker should meddle with his yard, and the tailor with his lass, the fisher with his pencil, and the painter with his nets. But I am sent to find those persons whose names are here writ, and can never find what names the person writing person here hath writ, I must to the learned in good time. So now the servant is interesting. We're going to highlight that last little bit in orange because he says, I must to the learned, right, in good time. And then we're going to do a comment off of it. And what we want to say is that the servant can't read. We notice that because he says that I can't, like, I'm supposed to know how to find these people that are written here. I can't because I can't read what a writing person hath writ, right? And so I must go to the learned to find out. The other thing that we notice is his lines are different. You see how Benvolio's lines down here are more like a poem and his are more like a paragraph? Shakespeare does that specifically to show us that a character is unlearned, that he hasn't gone to school, and that he's a commoner. And we also can see that his name isn't capitalized. See how Benvolio's name is all capitalized? So he's of the lesser class. So he can't read, which makes it problematic. So now they're on this street, right? And Benvolio and Romeo enter. Perfect timing. And remember that Benvolio is walking around showing Romeo the sights and trying to get him to forget about Rosaline and to go after a different girl, right? Tut, man, one fire burns out, another's burning, one pain is lessened by another anguish. Turn giddy and be holp by backward turning, one desperate grief curs with another's languish. Take thou some new infection to thy eye, and the rank poison of the old will die. Your plantain leaf is excellent for that. For what, I pray thee? For your broken shin. Why, Romeo, art thou mad? Not mad, but bound more than a madman is, shut up in prison, kept without my food, whipped and tormented, and godden, good fellow. And that they're talking to the servant, right? They like bump into him. God ye godden, I pray, sir, can you read? I, mine own fortune in my misery. Romeo's joking with the servant. He's playing around with him. Perhaps you have learned it without book, but I pray, can you read anything you see? I, if I know the letters and the language. Say ye honestly, rest you merry. So the servant's like, Romeo is being a jerk. I'm going to leave, right? Because Romeo's playing with him. And Romeo's like, oops, sorry. Stay, fellow, I can read. He's like, I'll do it. Don't worry. So he reads the letter. The servant gives him the letter. Here you go. Here's the letter. And so this is who is being invited. Signor Martino and his wife and daughters, County Anselm and his beauteous sisters, the lady widow of Vitravio, Signor Placentio and his lovely nieces, Mercutio and his brother Valentine, mine uncle Capulet, his wife and daughters, my fair niece Rosaline, Livia, Signor Valentio and his cousin Tybalt, Lucio and the lively Helena, a fair assembly, whither they should they come. Now, it's important right here that we stop and we talk about the three important invites, because there's three in that little note that should stand out to us, right? So we're going to look through here, and the first one is Mercutio. Mercutio is important. We know that guy, right? Mercutio. That is Romeo's best friend. Then we keep going and look. Oh, Rosaline. So Rosaline is also being invited. So we're going to put that on our three important invites. Rosaline. And then the third one, the other name we recognize is Tybalt. So Tybalt has been invited to the party. So Tybalt. Now, these are our three important invites. Now, the reason that they're important, Rosaline is the reason Romeo's going to want to go to the party, because he wants to hang out with Rosaline. He's like, ooh, I know where she's going to be. I'm going to hang out with her. Mercutio is important because that's how they're going to get into the party, because Mercutio can get them in with his like +1 or +8. And Tybalt is important because we know he's the greatest sword fighter in Verona, and Romeo is the second greatest sword fighter in Verona. So Tybalt is going to be there, but Romeo and Tybalt might get into some sort of squabble, right? Because they're both sword fighters. So a fair assembly, whither should they come? Up. Whither? To supper, to our house. Whose house? My master's. Indeed, I should have asked that before. Now I'll tell thee without asking. My master is the great rich Capulet. And if you be not of the house of Montagues, I pray come and crush a cup of wine. Rest you merry. And then the servant leaves. So now he invited him. He's like, if you're not of the house of Montague, come on by. Benvolio, at this same ancient feast of Capulet sups the fair Rosaline, whom thou so lovest. With all the admired beauties of Verona, go thither, and with unattainted eye compare her face with some that I shall show, and I will make thee think I swan a crow. So we are going to mark that whole thing because this is all really good lines for the plot, right? All of this. So what he's saying is the same thing they've been doing. Come, let's go to the feast, and then we can have a direct comparison. Rosaline will be there, and then other girls will be there, and we'll compare them. Which is better? And I will show you that Rosaline's not as good as you think she is. With the doubt religion of mine eye maintains such falsehood, then turns tears to fires. And these who often drowned could never die. Transparent heretics be burnt for liars. One fairer than my love, the all-seeing sun never saw her match since first the world begun. He's like, nah, no one's going to compare to Rosaline. Tut, you saw her fair, none else being by. He's like, you saw her being beautiful, but there was no other girls to compare her to. Herself poised with herself in either eye, but in that crystal scales let there be weighed your lady's love against some other maid, that I will show you shining at this feast, and she shall scant show well that now shows best. I'll go along, no such sight to be shown, but to rejoice in splendor of mine own. So we're going to do a text box right here for this. Just to remind, oh, no, not like that. We want a comment box. Here we go. So what we're going to say is Romeo is going so he can have another chance with Rosaline. Oops. Rosaline. Cool. All right, so now what I want you to do, we finished Act 1, Scene 2. I want you to do the after reading on your own and to try your best. So remember that we're highlighting in green the past against the future. There is probably some good lines with the Capulet Paris stuff there, right? There won't be any futility of fighting fate, right? But there is some light and dark, because remember, we were talking about the sun up with the Romeo Benvolio lines here, okay? So I want you to finish your annotations up, and then I want you to do those after reading annotations. Look for our 3 motifs. And I'll see you next time. So hopefully you enjoyed Act 1, Scene 2. We'll see you later. Bye.